Thank you, Busi Odesse. I'm happy to be here. I feel Desse.
Yeah. Mid-late 90s?
Aging me, but yeah, something like that. The most important thing about journalism is independence. If you're not independent, then you can't be impartial.
You've worked for different brands, though. Did you ever feel like you were compromised?
The investigation revealed that there was some sort of a disagreement over the song. The story of how the summers are put together is something that we need to be honest about as RiSA.
There's a lot of discrepancies, and people just say, but without necessarily knowing. How does the judging system work?
Yes. Busi, thank you for this.
We're all about sharing the facts and teaching the tricks. Let's talk all things about music, the life of music. Let's engage about the rhythm. Let's talk about our passion for melodies, sound, and those beautiful classics. Let's get educated about these decibels we oh so dearly love. On this podcast, we talk about these politics. Welcome to Music Politricks. Sanbonani dumelang kere ekse nakalina ke nabusi baba khulu baba dese bareke the queen of Pitori. We really appreciate all the love and all the appreciation from all of you guys. Make sure you do subscribe, you press the like button, and make sure that notification bell is also on. Today, I'm just so grateful because there's absolutely no way you are in love with entertainment culture in this country and you've never seen or come across any of his work. I mean, he's been around in the industry for a long time, a veteran of note, top 2 and not number 2, Mr. Lesley Mofokeng. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Busi Odesse. I'm happy to be here. I feel Desse.
Yeah. You've been there, though.
Thank you. I don't know. You tell me. But I'm just excited to, Lina, finally meet you, first of all.
Likewise.
Because I think we might have a mutual friend. I don't know if he's still your friend. Jacob Matsosa.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm so happy to
Jacob always tells me about Busi, the Queen of Pitori.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, that you've heard about me. I'm just like, yo, swearing. And look, you've had an interesting journey just as an entertainment journalist as well. You know, I mean, from your first job at Sunday Times. First job, Sunday Times. Wow.
That was insane. First job. I mean, I tell people that I sometimes feel that my life is kind of boring.
Wow.
Because some people have these beautiful stories of how they started out and how they were waiters and how they got discovered and how they did this, and you can see them rise through the ranks. Whereas I was taken from a classroom, go University of Northwest in Mofokeng, and straight to the Sunday Times, which was the top of the charts. Really, it was the biggest newspaper at that time, selling 500,000 copies every Sunday. And there I was as a young journalist, working and finding myself and meeting all of these amazing people and having the access and the power that the Sunday Times brings. It was insane. I'm very grateful, and I know it's unusual for a South African to have that kind of a journey. We struggle before we get the big break. So mine is quite unusual.
Especially during the time you did that. I mean, this was probably like in the mid-late 90s.
Aging me, but yeah, something like that. It was the first time I went to the Sunday Times was in 1996.
Wow.
I was much younger than this. And I was, as I say, I was still what they call it a cub, or today they call them interns. So I went as an intern, and then in 1998 I became a full-time employee of my dream paper. My mother used to read the Sunday Times. The neighbors bought what we call black papers. My mother bought the Sunday Times, and for me to go work for the Sunday Times was just insane.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And you've interviewed the who's. Like, I mean, Brenda Fassie, Oprah Winfrey. The list honestly goes on and on and on. I really just want to give you your flowers.
I think you've done your homework. I didn't expect you to even know the people I interviewed. Yes, I when I look at that list, the fact that Miriam Makeba cooked for me, invited us to her house in North Riding and cooked dinner for us. Went across town looking for fish, special kind of fish in Yeovil.
Yeah.
Not the Yeovil you know now, but the Yeovil of that time.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've spent time with Yvonne Chaka Chaka at her house, just interviewing her for like 2 hours, and out of that came a lifelong relationship of mother and son. She even took me to Nigeria with her. Um, the fact that I actually worked on Brenda Fassie was almost like my staple. Whenever there was a story about Brenda Fassie, it was written by Lesley Mofokeng. And the ups and downs of the industry and all of that. Yeah, it has been an incredible journey. And I look back at those 21 years with gratitude and sometimes profound disbelief. Like, yo, motho o tswa ko dipolaseng tsa Mafikeng ko Letlhakane and went all the way to meet all of these wonderful people and traveled all over the world and met and interviewed bo Quincy Jones, bo Tevin Campbell. I mean, you name them.
Yeah.
Bo Eric Benet, bo whatever name you throw at me, I probably have met that person and interviewed them. So it's insane.
It actually really is.
Yeah.
What's the all-time favorite interview you've ever had in your life? And I'm talking local and international.
Sure, what an unfair question. After 21 years, the all-time favorite.
There must be a few
Whoa.
that really stand out.
Oh, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, there's a lot. I can't think. I go blank. As I mentioned, the interview that I had with Mama Yvonne, I remember writing that story, and it was like a fairy tale, a true fairy tale. When the gates of her house opened up, mablomo, the petals, the white rose petals were on the floor. And as we drove into the yard, these petals were going up in the air. It was really like a fairy tale. And that's how I actually wrote the story, that driving into this yard, met by these petals that are blowing up into the air, going to meet the Princess of Africa. And I sat down with her and I found the most wonderful, loving, warm, generous, kind soul. I'll never forget that interview. I'll never forget my interviews with Mama Miriam Makeba when she cooked for me again.
What did she cook, by the way?
She cooked fish. It was a buffet. It was a whole spread of meats and fish and vegetables and things. You know that she was fluent in French.
Sure.
So I was just mesmerized by this call that she received from someone in West Africa, I believe. And she was going on in and I was like, I want to speak that language.
And you do now know how to speak French.
I now know. How do you know this? I actually went out of my way to study French, learn French. I'm actually right now learning Spanish.
Oh, that is
because
so cool.
Because I've always had this obsession with languages. Even in my high school, I did well in languages. English and Setswana. I studied Setswana at school and Afrikaans. I got probably a simple C in Afrikaans at a time when people were getting the E, the F. But I got a C, and I couldn't believe it. That was a sign for me that actually languages are my thing. And that's why I ended up choosing communication and journalism and the work that I have done in the media space.
And that's amazing. I mean, you're a top-notch journalist, and you've had just the great privilege of seeing culture, entertainment culture in this country evolve. Where do you put the state of journalism right now?
Interesting. So I'm currently, I don't know when this is going to be broadcast, and I hope I'm not breaking any rules, but I sit on a panel of and a journalism awards event or ceremony. So I judge about 2 categories there. And it's a very privileged position to be in because you get to see the best of the best that's coming out of South Africa. And it's all inclusive. That you don't have to be a big star, you don't have to be national, regional, local, whatever. Anyone can submit for consideration. And I get to see what's happening. And in addition, by the way, I do teach journalism at Wits University.
Yes.
I teach honors level at Wits. So I kind of finally get to step back and look into what is happening in that space. And I have my opinions about where we're going. You know, the newsrooms of our time, we spoke about 1996. That's what, almost 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Yes, almost 30 years ago, were very resourced. We had tons and tons of journalists filling up the newsroom. We had lots of photographers. We had lots of sub-editors, proofreaders, revised sub, all of this. Like, the structure of the newsroom was very, or is different to what we know. Today, I mean, when I walked into the Sunday Times, the journalists were mature people. They were not young people. They were not. They were probably in the youngest must have been 30, and then 40, 50, 60 even, probably even 70 as sub-editors. So this wealth of knowledge, this experience, this experience nurtured us as young kids, showed us the ropes, and we learned a lot from those that have gone before us. So there was a nice soft landing pad for us, and mentorship and all of that. Unfortunately, today's journalism is very different. It's young people.
Yeah.
They are inexperienced. I mean, there are small little issues that you think are small, or I might think that they are small, but they are a symptom of a greater problem or issue. And I'll give you an example of a simple thing.
Sure.
There's always this issue of how do you write words. It's either you use US English or UK English.
Yeah.
To some people, by the way, it's not even a debate. You wrote the word utilize with a Z. And it's just like, that's how you write utilize. But if you've got a sharp editor, if your paper understands style and understands the English that's written in South Africa, they'll tell you that this is wrong. It has to be an S.
100%.
So we see a lot of those things. I'm giving you just a simple, basic example. There are many other issues. There are many ethical issues that we didn't have to face when we were young journalists. There was no social media. The influence of the advertisers, the influence of the PR companies, all of these things competing for the attention of journalists were there, but they could be mitigated. But I feel like right now, journalists, you know, maybe it's the cost of living, I don't know, or maybe it's just society and the pressures of wanting to show off that you're doing well. You end up compromising yourself. You end up agreeing to things, and then you realize that, oops, I shouldn't have said yes to that because now I cannot say this.
Sure.
The most important thing about journalism is independence. If you're not independent, then you can't be impartial. Then your stories won't have truthfulness. Then you can't really be accurate. You become so compromised that you lose the entire credibility.
You've worked for different brands, though. Did you ever feel like you were compromised?
Well, I mean, my job, my real 9 to 5 was being a journalist for 21 years, 1998 to 2019. So I worked for the Sunday Times, for the City Press, and the Sowetan. So that was my job. It was journalism. I really didn't have opportunities to do other things. We're actually bound by contracts not to do all of these other things. So, for example, if you see me say that I wrote a story for Bona magazine or for Roots or whatever, it's approval. It goes through the channels of the newspaper to allow me to do that.
Sure.
So these brands that you're talking about, this is post 2019 when I became a freelancer. And then I finally got to dip my fingers into all these pies that I've been wanting to get into. Obviously, I did publish a book in 2012, the Kanyimba biography is my first book, but it's still part of the journalism offering, you know. But these other brands that you're talking about, for example, I did some work for the Queen, for Connie Ferguson. I did some work for, there's a lot of people, but well, because I was a freelancer, I'm free to do what comes my way.
I hear.
So what I'm telling you is that from 2019, I haven't had like a proper full-time employment where I'm committed to one brand or one company,
Sure.
or just specializing with that. My contract has been that I can do other things. But obviously, the highlight of this time from 2019 is the fact that I get to work for RiSA
Yeah.
and become the communications manager there. It has been an incredible privilege to be on the other side of the industry and represent the interests of the industry, of musicians, and communicate that. But yeah, I don't think I don't feel like I've been compromised in any way, shape, or form.
Hey, I ask because we hear stories where hey, this journalist this
Yeah.
journalist that, you know.
But
But
that's the thing. I think when you're a journalist, you are a journalist. You cannot be a journalist and be a PR person.
I see.
Or you can't be a journalist and manage artists. That's
Because then you're not
conflict of-
really a
yes,
journalist.
that's conflict of interest.
Sure.
So being a journalist is really such a noble calling, because it doesn't pay a lot of money. You need to know that it doesn't really pay a lot of money, but it gives you a lot of access and it gives you a lot of experiences. I mean, I traveled to the United States with probably 100 rand in my savings. I didn't have money, but there was a sponsor that took us on this trip to the United States
Sure.
and took care of all the expenses. And what an incredible experience. I mean, I met Nelson Mandela, who came to our office, to take a stroll inside the newsroom of the Sunday Times. So these are the examples of the access and experiences that money cannot buy.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And you spoke a little bit about RiSA, right? So a lot of people just know RiSA as, recording industry of South Africa. But as an organization, what do you actually do?
A lot of things. Yes, people know recording industry of South Africa, but they also know the Summers. The Summer is a big brand that sometimes people might think is actually bigger than the RiSA brand, but actually is a project. It's a project under this big umbrella called RiSA. As you said, it's the recording industry of South Africa. We are there to lobby for the industry. We are there to represent the interests of the industry.
Okay.
A lot of musicians and artists and people who record music will tell you that they go to RiSA to get what is known as the ISRC code,
Yes.
which is really your ID. So in that way, a colleague of mine called Atlechang calls us the home affairs of the music industry, because that's where you get your ID that will travel all over the world, and you can track your music and see where it's going. So that's one of the things that we do. Another thing that we do that is very important in the industry, and people just in general who are interested in music need to know, is that RiSA is the only issuer of certification when people hit gold and platinum, all of those sales. RiSA is the only one that is authorized to issue that certificate, and for you to go and tell people that you sold platinum or gold or whatever the status is, it comes from RiSA. We are involved in anti-piracy campaigns.
That's good.
We put the interests of the industry first. Anything that has got to do with making sure that our musicians are protected. There are even issues that have gone to Parliament that we campaign against, like the copyright bill.
Sure.
And all of those things. That's the work that we do on a daily basis. We organize the South African Music Awards, which is, by the way, a 365 days kind of work.
Yeah.
People think maybe we meet with a month to go and say, oh, we have to organize the Summers. Where are you going to have them? Who's going to organize? Who's the sponsor? Where can we find a host? No. Immediately when the curtain falls down for this year's summer, we begin work for next year's summer. And then we also have this exciting initiative called the official SA charts, or official South African charts. This is where you get to see what South Africans are listening to. The reason why it's so special to us and it's so unique is that the power is with the listener or the consumer. We track music played by music consumers on their phones or whatever platform or device that they use. We've got a company called BMED, which is based in Spain, and they make this aggregation of what is played on Spotify, on Deezer,
Okay.
on Apple Music, on YouTube Music.
Okay.
And then they'll tell us in South Africa for this week, you had, let's say, 10 million streams. Out of these 10 million streams, 1 million streams were for this song. And then 500 million was this. And then we get all of that.
Okay.
And then we get to compile the chart. And the chart, as I say, reflects the power of the consumer. It's not dictated to by a music compiler. It's not somebody somewhere in an office putting together information, but it's actually the power of what you as a consumer is playing. And I always say that the importance of the charts is that they give the industry intelligence about what are people listening to. If you want to climb the top of the charts, what are the trends? What are South Africans listening to? Look to the charts. And obviously, our unique selling point is that it's an aggregation of everything. So some people hear them talking about how they're trending on Spotify. They got the certificate for having the most streams. We are saying we have all of the digital streaming platforms, all under one roof. And here are the numbers. That's about 90% of the music streamed in South Africa.
Because, I have a very important question when it comes to these charts, right? So there's a drive show I hosted, a radio show, right? And we actually had that as a feature. So every single week on Fridays, we would actually receive information and we'd just give people the lowdown in terms of what are you actually listening to, right? There was a time where the Kavalungu track obviously was a big deal, right? And it was in the top 5. Then all of a sudden, it just disappeared. And it wasn't even in the top 20, but the song was still sort of out. It was still streaming. It was, then all of a sudden it came back and then it was still in the top 10. So, I mean, how does something like that happen? I mean, are they vetting processes?
No,
are they
not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I have a faint remembrance of the incident you're talking about because I think it actually even came to me to investigate and issue some sort of an explainer to people, must have been you maybe, about how a song kind of disappeared. And our investigation revealed that there was some sort of a disagreement over the song and how it was registered or recorded. So in the end, there was this conflict of which song is this, which version was that, and it led to this confusion that in the end it could not be accounted for the way it's supposed to be accounted for. That's how I remember that there was this issue. The calculation and the aggregation of the streaming or of the streamings is done independently by this company, BMed. It's out in Spain.
Yes.
They're out in Spain. And they have the access to all of these digital streaming platforms and they monitor all of these songs. So there's no way that someone can come and somehow withdraw a song. It must have had something to do with how it was recorded. In terms of not recording in terms of studio, but how it was registered. That, okay, maybe there's this version and that other version, but this one changed the settings or whatever. But generally, it's an independent process. We just get the numbers from BMed and then we share them every Thursday at noon on our website, the official South African charts. And we also are all over social media. We also have a podcast. We have a newsletter. We have all of these exciting things to get people to engage with the charts. Because I think it just shows the power of the consumer.
100%.
Yeah.
And now let's talk a little bit about the summers.
Yes.
Hey, I felt like last year we were this close to the summers not happening. Something about the KZN government pulling out, 20 million on the table. I mean, what actually happened?
There's, the structure of how the summers, or maybe let me say the story of how the summers are put together is something that we need to be honest about as RiSA and to be open and honest with South Africans to understand how the summers work. It reminds me of the saying in English, keeping up with the Joneses. We look good, like go red carpet summer and everyone's looking great and it's like, oh, they've got money and everything. That's not the truth. A lot goes on behind the scenes and it's all about money. It boils down to money.
Sure.
It boils down to sponsorship. It boils down to support, whether it's national or as in national government or provincial government or a municipality, and obviously corporates.
Sure.
Our dream is to have, or let me put it this way. When we go to Sun City, for example, and you can think about it, I mean, it'll make sense when you start thinking about it. We need a budget of 30 million rands to host 2,000 people over a weekend go Sun City. Some of them sleeping go Palace of the Lost City. A room is about 10,000 rand.
Sure.
Forget about the food and the drinks and whatever, just accommodating these people. Think about setting up go Super Bowl, the production that goes in there, the lights, the screens, the technology, the LED, the whatever, the production that goes in there.
And you haven't even gotten to the crew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a very expensive exercise, but it makes sense because the summers are actually a mega event.
Yeah.
People need to realize that the summers are the biggest music award ceremony in South Africa. Sure. They've been going on for 30 years. Yeah. It's our 30th year. Many have come and gone. Many have gone and gone.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that it's a very expensive exercise, and we're not going. The thing about it is that we don't want to compromise the quality of the summers
100%.
because we know what our musicians put in. And the fact that they are world-class musicians. Yeah. We really have the best of the best in the world.
Yeah.
So when we put together the summers, it has to reflect that. So it won't be cheap. We don't cut corners. But we need the support of national government. The Department of Arts and Culture has been great.
Yeah.
We also need the support of a provincial government. So, for example, if you go to Sun City, the Northwest government comes to the party. We're thankful for that. When we're in Gauteng, that's kind of how it's structured. So now going back to KZN, yes, we agreed, or we got into an agreement with the KZN government that they'll be hosting the summer 29, which was last year in KZN, and everything was in place. We had our weekly meetings and everything was going well. Until politics came into the picture. And like everyone who was watching the news conference on television, we learned that KZN was not going to host us anymore. But our CEO, Advocate Ntlanta Sibisi, said to us that the summers are going to happen.
Okay.
And we were like, okay, we left with, what was that? It was October. We left with about 8 weeks or 12 weeks. The year will be over. How are we going to do this? And he said, they're just going to happen. And we had to do some nifty footwork. We had to think. We had to be smart. We had to find the industry and see what's happening. And a deal was struck with Africa Fest, which was staging this amazing festival at Sunbet Arena, Pretoria. And that's how we ended up in Pretoria, in collaboration with them. And I must tell you that was a marriage made in entertainment heaven.
Wow.
They had all of the technology. They had all of the lights. They had all of the screens and everything. Just go and watch Summer 29 on YouTube or wherever you can find them. On YouTube, preferably, so that you can see the quality of what went in there. The performances. The hosts, the presenters. It was a dream. It was really one of our best productions.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And with, was it 3 weeks that we had to put it together? 3 weeks. So that's why I said it was a marriage made in entertainment heaven. Otherwise, things could have fallen apart. It was not a perfect event. As I say, we had 3 weeks to put everything together. But the forces we pulled together to create that magic, and that magic we'll always see when you look at that production of Summer 29. But we have lessons that we've learned. But it was a different year. We always say that Summer 29, Summer 2023 was a different year. It cannot be used to judge us.
Yeah.
People, the summers get judged.
A lot.
It's nice when you work at the summers and everyone asks you for tickets, but wait the event until the event happens and then they start throwing criticism at you. But overall, I think South Africans have been very supportive.
Yeah.
The industry has been very supportive. We are seeing a lot of numbers this year, a lot of people entering the summers. The summers are still prestigious. The summers are seen as a stepping stone to greater things. Tyler, by the way, was our nominee last year. And I know a lot of musicians, for example, Wouter Kellerman, who will tell you that I value this honor that comes from my people first. Before I get to win a Grammy or a BET or whatever, what are South Africans saying? Once your people give you that blessing, you can go anywhere in the world and say, I've got a summer at home.
Yeah.
Because some people will ask you, so you come from South Africa, what have you won? And you're like, no, I just want to win a Grammy. And they're like, but what about your people?
Exactly.
Where do you come from?
Exactly.
And that is why the summers are a brand to be protected by all. I always plead with the industry to say, the music industry, don't take the summers for granted. I don't want to imagine a time where the summers do not exist anymore.
Sure.
What will you have?
That would be
What
hard
will you
because
have?
they play such an important role in music culture in this
Yeah.
country, But as we wrap up, please just quickly tell us, how does the judging system work? Because
Yes.
there's a lot of discrepancies and people just say, but without necessarily knowing. How does the judging system work?
Yes. Busi, thank you for this. I think this is part of the drive that this is the reason why we jump at opportunities like this, because we get to explain the summers to people. There's a huge educational drive that we need to focus on, and it's ongoing. We always, whenever we get an activation, we tell people about how the summers work and the process, how independent it is. So people submit. There's a time period that is given. Right now, we are looking at music that was released from the 15th of April 2023 to 14 April 2024.
Okay.
So even if you released on the 13th of April 2024, you qualify.
Eligible. Cool.
Even on the day,
Yeah.
the 14th
Yeah.
of April, you can submit, you can release your album at 12 o'clock or at 8 p.m. It's everywhere on the DSPs. At midnight, before midnight, you submit, you qualify.
Okay.
Because, sorry.
It's okay.
Because the summers are not about, it's not a popularity contest. It's about the body of work that you present, first of all. So it's the playing fields are level. Everyone is treated the same way. You submit, there's a vetting process to make sure that you complied with all the requirements.
Okay.
After that, you get another vetting process that's overseen by a committee of music experts. That is just to make sure that you're in the right genre, that you've entered in the right category.
Okay.
And then after that, the music is taken to a panel of experts that are taken from the music industry. Some of them are music producers, retired, probably. You shouldn't be making music to be a judge.
Sure.
Some of them are music critics. Some of them are music lecturers at universities. Some of them are journalists. It's everyone, really. There's about, let's say, 250 group of people that are entrusted with listening to the music that's submitted. And they are forced really by the system that we use to listen to the entire album.
Yeah.
So you might have one song and you don't get, and it's popular and you don't get nominated. It's simply because the album is not complete.
I see.
So we listen to the entire album. These judges, by the way, work remotely. They don't get to know who they are. They don't. I won't know that you and I are judging the same category.
Sure.
I might suspect that you are a judge, but they sign an NDA not to talk about this judging process or the identity until after the event. Because after the event, we do publish the list of judges, so you can go there and see who these people are and understand how they scored and how they came to decide who the winners are. So after that process, we have a list of nominees, 5 per category, that we announce at a gala event and, breakfast or whatever. And then we build up to the show where we announce the winners.
Okay.
So I always want to know at what point do you get to bribe these 5 judges? How do you know them? And how do you get to them?
100%.
And how do you make sure that they all score you in a certain way? So sometimes we need to engage with people and respond to their questions and try to make them understand the measures that are put in place to ensure the integrity of the summers.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a very solid system, and I think that's what counts the most.
By the way, I have been a summer judge myself.
Yes, I think for like 10 years or
exactly.
something, sure.
So it's a process that I understand myself.
Yeah, no, 100%. But now because like sometimes there's just something in me, ratang ditaba. Ba kry-a bokae? Like how much money do they get? Should they
winners,
win? Yeah.
It's actually on our website. You can go check for yourself.
Okay.
But probably the it starts from 20,000 rand,
Wow.
goes all the way up depending on the category that you've entered. We do actually, the summers carry a prize, and that's why it's so important to have sponsors. That's why it's so important to make sure that they are well supported, because we don't want to give you just a trophy.
And I guess a big shout out to the Motsepe Foundation.
By the way, Motsepe Foundation stuck with us from last year. They're still with us this year. We're excited. We're still talking to other corporates to come on board and make sure that we deliver the best summer 30. This is a huge moment for us. 30 years of the summer.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lucy.
Before you leave, though, can you please? You are a legend. You know, I don't know if you're aware of it. You really are. You're a veteran. You know, you're someone who's really fed and been a catalyst in entertainment culture in this country. You know, it's not every day that someone can sit next to you and ask you questions like I have. But now, can you go squeeze the indie artist? You know, what advice would you give to artists, you know, in terms of how to maneuver the industry, in terms of ensuring that they've got staying power?
I just think they just have to have the belief and trust in the process. I just think people come to me and say, I don't want to enter the summers because I'm not a big artist. It's not about that. It is not about that. The summers, for example, as an example, the process of the summer is that, this expression I used earlier on, the playing fields are level. It starts with believing in the work that you do and understanding and responding to the calling that you have. I really do believe that being a musician is a calling. You can't just walk in and create music. There should be a driving force behind you. And I do believe that you're not moving alone. I really do think that musicians carry spirits and carry stuff, really, guys, whether it's my piano or whatever. But being a musician and sending messages that are so profound that they can echo through the years and over the years is a gift. And I'm asking for musicians to tap into that gift, have that realization, and believe in themselves that they are worth it. And then they should go for it and not hold back.
100%. You heard it live right here. Okay, not live, but you heard it right here on Music Politricks. We really appreciate all the insights, this has been very insightful, just by the way, very educational as well. So I hope that you feel the same way. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, to comment, to do everything. And of course, from Lesley Mofokeng himself and myself, Kalina Kenabusi, Baba Kulu, Baba Dese, the Queen of Pitori. We are outie.